Greetings, friends and fellow life travelers, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod, and I am your Life Mastery coach. Today, we're going to be talking about one of those things that most of us don't like to admit into our lives: fear. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? You know what I'm talking about. Things like fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of making mistakes, fear of losing someone's approval, and, well, all kinds of other fears that I'm sure you can name, but they're all of the same basic nature. They all basically become blocks to our fulfillment, our happiness, and our success. And yet, if you think about it for just a second, you can probably see that every one of these fears is really not a whole lot more than an unpleasant, self-limiting belief that may be living a life of its own in the chatter of your ego mind. Well, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And to help me take a closer look at this and other fears of this nature, I've invited a friend of mine and a colleague to join me and to really take a deep dive. My friend here is Laura Franco, and she is the owner of Brave Healer Productions and a real powerhouse who likes to feng shui her soul through her writing. She's a kick-ass writer. She's a 6-time published poet and author. She's an inspirational speaker. She's a holistic physical therapist and a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo. So, you better watch it. Anyway, she's got over 2 decades of experience in healing, and she is here today to help us do something about those fears. Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I love this topic. Let's go.
You love this topic. Do you mean when you say you love this topic, the topic of fear itself or the topic of overcoming fears? Which part of that is actually true for you?
Well, it's both. And I call it purpose-driven fear. Because, all of the examples you gave earlier, it's really that kind of stuff. And if you can start to know the difference between the purpose-driven kind of fears you're having and the other stuff, then you're already on the right track. I love all of it.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get into this idea of purpose-driven fear a little bit more later. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about, this thing that I mentioned. I think it's an illusion. I think a lot of fear is an illusion. Many teachers nowadays use this common acronym that I'm sure we've all heard about: false evidence appearing real. That's an acronym for fear. I heard another one, which is a little more graphic. It's fuck everything and run. But those are kind of, little acronyms that we create to help us understand that our fears aren't as real as we think they are. Now, this is not to say that we don't have fear about real danger occasionally, and that it's not to say that we don't have to pay attention to that. What we're talking about here today is the kind of fear that shows up just because you're trying to show up as a human being, as a full-blown human being. Does that resonate for you?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Fear really is just a feeling, and the problem is what we're making it mean. And so if we can really, I'm a big believer in practicing body awareness and body awareness kinds of meditation, because the more that you get to know those messages inside your body, the more you realize that it's the thought you're attaching to the feeling that's the problem. And that awareness is really the key to all of this. And like I said, I love the topic because it's been seriously life-changing for me.
Mm-hmm. Seriously life-changing. Now, first of all, you've said a whole bunch of great things that I want to come back to, but can you tell us a little bit about how that life-changing thing has happened for you? Personal stories are usually the best teachers, so I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes I think when I start to talk about this, I want to tell people I feel like I've had a decade's worth of overcoming a deep-seated unworthiness. And however we want to talk about that, people's childhood trauma, things that happen to you over your life, I don't know. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'm kind of done with all that BS. And I want to move into the place where I am being my full, unapologetic, authentic self and really feeling worthy in that skin. And that's how it's become life-changing for me to deal with fear, but really have more fun with it. Use the feelings as a compass to point me in the direction of my wildest dreams. Sometimes that meant in my own life, really, really hard decisions. But understanding fear from that standpoint, really understanding it as a feeling, and then separately what I'm making the feeling mean. How it changed me was as I was stepping up to be more courageous in my relationships, I was able to have a voice, period. And whereas before I might be doing that, whatever you said, fuck everything and run, I'd be turning away from my ex-husband and running into the bedroom and not saying anything. I would be very, very quiet when the colleague or the boss was giving me constructive criticism. I wouldn't really be speaking up for myself at all in the past. And so that's been the life changer. You get that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Yeah. Your voice got silenced by something in your past that, you created a belief around that. And the fear that showed up was, if I speak, if I let my voice be heard, then this is going to happen.
Exactly.
And that's where that churning feeling of fear came from. Is that correct? Is that how am I understanding that right?
You got it. You got it, baby. You know this stuff.
Well, that's been my experience too. I mean, and I know a lot of people who've been through similar experiences where they basically silence themselves because they're afraid to speak. They're afraid that if they say something, someone else is going to tell them they're stupid, that they're bad, that they're wrong, that their ideas are crazy, that, that don't be ridiculous. I mean, I had that kind of story in my life too when I was a kid. And I think that's the problem. It happens mostly when we're children. When you're 5 years old and you have this brilliant idea and mom or dad says, what the hell are you talking about? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And what does it do? The parents don't really realize, I don't think, what they're doing. And in their own mind, if they were to say that to an adult, it might not be so bad. But they're saying it to a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old kid who's just really excited about something. And what happens is the kid learns, oh, I can't share stuff like this with adults. It might just be mom and dad at first, but later on it's going to be spread out. And soon enough, they're going to say, I can't share this with anybody,
Exactly. I wonder if you might want to talk about that for a minute, because it's interesting that you hit on probably one of my roughest triggers was the stupid thing. Mm-hmm. And it's got such a visceral feel in me when I let myself go there. And I know for everybody, we all have one of those. Right. And it seems like it can, even in the moment, just speaking about those situations, you can start to feel sick to your stomach. You can start to have a choky feeling in your throat about it. Stupid was a rough trigger for me, and it carried into my adulthood. And so, it's great to talk about those childhood wounds, but then how are we pulling this baggage and this crap into our adult lives? And then that's where we get paralyzed. We get maybe some random comments about something we've actually been brave enough to put out there out loud, some writing, some speaking. And all of a sudden with this random comment from a perfect stranger, not even anyone that matters that much, we find ourselves shriveling back into that 5-year-old body with that terrible feeling, Yep. And that's where I like to talk about, like, if you can recognize yourself inside of that moment and recognize the feeling, you can kind of separate yourself from it a little bit, and you can have a conversation with that little girl, that little boy, and just say, hey, I'm here. We got this. Come on. And, you grab her hand and you go do it together. That's one of the tools I've been using, actually.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you're absolutely right. These triggers, they don't just go away because we grew up.
Right.
We may believe that we put them aside and we've outgrown them and all that stuff, but that's just simply not the case. And what happens, and I've talked about this on many, many different shows. This is all about shadow work. This is all about the stuff that we put into the background, the stuff that we tried to hide, repress, or deny because we don't want to acknowledge its existence within us. And then what happens is the more we do that, then we begin to see this behavior showing up on other people. We start projecting it outwards because it's so scary to see it within ourselves. This is just part of our natural behavior patterns that are tied to this strange construction that we've created called an ego. It's pretty much all ego that is doing this, because the ego is all based on separation and differences. It's not based on inclusion and connection. And it's certainly not, and it's based on fear. If you think about it, right. The ego thrives on fear. And so what we need to do is we need to recognize that, we have this fear within us. And having the fear, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just an emotion. It's like anything else. I mean, fear, anger, sadness, joy, they're all wonderful, wonderful emotions that serve a purpose. And what we need to do is we need to allow them to flow within us. Because if we don't, then what we express, we get to release. But what we repress, we keep forever. Mm. And when we keep it, we lock it into our bodies. We lock it into the tissues of our bodies. And then we wonder why things like disease and sickness and even awful things like cancer start showing up in us, because we have not taken the time to heal ourselves and to heal our wounds. So I'm sorry, we're taking a bit of a departure from the original topic, but you kind of brought the point to light when you talked about how you're triggered now from stuff that happened when you were 3 or 4 or 5 years old.
No, I love that you brought it into that realm, because you guys are also, you've got a myofascial therapist here today. And so we learned very early on that those emotions all have a physiology inside the body. And when we treat the physical tissues in somebody's body, we're not only treating a strained muscle, a pulled this or a pulled that. We're actually treating a place that you described where we stuffed all of that stuff in a response back then, possibly that was just natural, normal, sort of trying to protect ourselves. But right. Then, as an adult, we can take more responsibility for that healing. We can seek out, topics like this, and we can do healing in so many different ways. So part of it is about exploring those different ways, but the physical tissues, I love to bring the idea of the mind and the body together for people, because there's enough research now. We know that everything is connected. Everybody is learning about this now. So if we can start to bridge the gap between those, maybe the left brain people, scientific people, and the right brain, woo-woo healing people, and we can all come together to help each other understand that it's a combination and an integration of both things.
Exactly.
We grew up thinking that all of our physical pain was just physical cause, but you stuff fear for long enough and unworthiness and anger, you stuff that stuff for long enough and you are going to hurt physically.
Yep.
And so I like to help people understand the connection so that they know there are other ways to get better, to release, to feel joy again, to feel pain-free again.
Mm-hmm. And you've hit on some great points here. And the idea of release is one thing that I think scares people a lot. I've been pushing this down for so long. I'd be terrified to bring it up because it's just going to explode like a giant volcano and cause all kinds of damage.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that could happen if you don't find a safe place to do this. And this is why, I've learned for myself, there's a process called shadow work, which allows me to go into what we call a sacred container. And in that container, people are encouraged to go inside into their shadow parts, to release all the energy that's there, as whatever energy wants to come out right now. And we can contain it. We know how to contain it safely. We know how to make it safe for you to express all of that stuff. And the amazing thing about this, I've had my own personal experience of this. I had so much rage inside me when I was, in my 30s and 40s. I didn't even know it was there, to be honest. I was denying it so much. But when I finally was able to release it in 2003, the stuff that came out of me blew my mind. And I thought it was going to blow up the place, really. But the men who were there to support me, they did not let that happen. They contained it, and they contained me. And they allowed me to get underneath all of that gucky anger and fear and everything else down to what was really going on, which was a deep sadness, deep sadness for not having been expressing myself truly and honestly and openly. There was so much sadness that came out. I mean, I've never cried that much in my life. And I mean, the stuff that was coming out of my head blew my mind too. But you know what I mean? It was such an amazing release. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I got rid of all of it, because I don't think it's possible necessarily to get rid of all of it in one setting. But it sure helped me to recognize and realize that this was the only way that I was ever going to get to be who I really am, is to give myself permission and to find a safe place to release all this stuff so that I can reclaim the beauty and the magnificence and the worthiness and the humanity of who I really am.
So important to find a safe space for that kind of release. And especially as a man, I'm just going to say it, it's harder for you guys. I think women naturally gravitate toward healing and getting help with healing. And I think for men, it's more challenging. And it's also been the instances where I've been in classes with men and women where I have felt the energy release be so profound was when I would watch a man and the process that they were going through, to be able to release. This isn't for sissies,
Right.
And I think you said it earlier, where people are afraid to open up Pandora's box because they think that they won't be able to put a lid on it again. They think all kinds of things about the scariness of going there. That they'll fall into this pit and never be able to get out. You know what? None of that is true. Let's just go back to that idea. That feeling you're having, it's a feeling. Where is it in your body? Is it in your heart? Is it in the middle of your chest? Is it in your gut? Stop making it mean so many things and be brave and do what your soul is calling you to do, which is probably, if you're a seeker, move toward experiences that can help you like that. Because man, you and I both know that it is worth it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. And yeah, I recognize that I had that same fear when I first contemplated doing this stuff. The fear of, man, I'll never be able to stop it if it starts, that sort of stuff. And what I discovered, the other thing that I had a fear about was, if people see this crap, this ugliness inside me, they're going to hate me. They're going to run away. They're never going to ever talk to me again. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. All those thoughts were going on in my head.
Yeah.
And those thoughts were paralyzing thoughts. They kept me from doing what needed to be done. Once I got past and I saw other people doing this work, I said, well, he did that. I can do it. He did that. I can do it.
Yeah.
When I got to that place, then I dove in. And I went right into the deep end, I'm telling you. Afterward, I discovered something very, very, very important. And that is, nobody, not a single person, ran away or even turned away while I was doing my work.
Yeah.
Every single person was there, and I could feel their hearts. I could feel the tears coming up for them because of the work that I was doing.
Yes.
I could feel, it was just absolutely amazing. And I realized at that point, the more I do this, the more I get to know who I really am. And the more I get to connect with people on a deeper level, a level that I've never experienced before. So it was a deep, deep learning that took me some time to get through the bullshit of my ego mind before I was able to get down into the heart and soul of the matter.
I'd love to really kind of stay there for a moment, because what you're describing is a powerful, powerful idea that in the middle of our own courage and moving into that healing space for ourselves, around us, whoever is around us is automatically being shifted by the energy that is going on in what you think is just your process. And I say this too in terms of writing, because I'm a writer and I use writing as a healing tool. Words heal. when you're brave enough to share them. Same as the healing process that you dove into, you were doing that surrounded by these lovely, amazing people, except for you don't really know that in the beginning. You're afraid people will be afraid of you. Exactly. If they see, it's kind of humorous, right? That's why I like to have fun with this a little bit more, because it's a serious topic, but if you can just back away a couple gigantic steps, you're going to see that you can really kind of laugh at yourself a little bit. You can have more fun with it. And then you can really profoundly realize the power of it. It's a big, big deal to me.
Well, there's a couple of things here that I want to attach to it. One is the fun idea is probably furthest away from anybody's mind, right?
It is, I know.
and I totally get that. But there's one thing that really, really should be addressed here, and something that people don't realize is the depth of the pain is not nearly as bad as you may think it is. This is one of those amazing things. When I started releasing it, I had all this convulsions and stuff, and my body was releasing stuff, but it didn't physically hurt. It was I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't painful in any traditional sense of the word. It was uncomfortable because it was not something that I was used to doing.
Yeah.
But it didn't hurt. It's not like breaking a leg or something like that.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important for people to understand that.
Yeah, we call it therapeutic pain, and we call it a healing crisis in our world. So, and the difference between a therapeutic kind of pain and a pain kind of pain, right? And yeah, you're right. It's funny. I hadn't realized that is probably what a lot of people are afraid of, is that they're going to have to re-experience some old, very painful pain. And that kind of pain that you're feeling when you are guided by experts and skilled and compassionate and open-hearted, non-judgmental healers is not that kind of pain. It's different. And it is very difficult to help people understand it unless they have an experience. And when you have an experience, you start to get it. It's a great thing to talk about, because I think at least when we're having these conversations about it, somebody hears about that for the first time. They think, oh, okay, I'm not going to die, even though it might feel like it,
Right. Yeah. The likelihood of death is pretty slim. Yes. Pretty slim. I want to say something. On one hand, you are in a way dying. You're creating a death scenario for an old part of yourself that really has been just hanging around and dragging you down.
Yes.
You're not really killing yourself. You're just kind of killing off this old image of yourself. And when you do that, and I don't even like to think of it as killing or as dying so much as merely passing. It was an old image of yourself that may have served a purpose back in the day when it came into being. And it may have served a purpose for some period of time even. But now as an adult, it may no longer be serving the purpose for which it was originally intended. And in fact, the thing you're trying to protect yourself from through that behavior is probably still happening in your life anyway. And so the technique, the strategy that you're using isn't even working anymore. Yes. And that's the whole point. You're trying to uncover these effective, fear-based, limiting belief strategies so that you can start to emerge. It's almost like, oh, I like that. This is just it coming to me now. It's like being the caterpillar inside the chrysalis that's just stuck there and fighting your way out. The chrysalis is no longer serving you. It's not there anymore. Now the butterfly can emerge. And that's what you are, a beautiful monarch butterfly. So let yourself come out.
Exactly. And, healing happens in layers for a lot of people. And I always like to remind people, you're not going to take, so many layers off at once that you can't handle it. You're going to be able to handle it, even if it's a layer at a time. And it's uncovering. It's like, there's this picture in my mind of a lantern with 4 glass panes on the sides, but they're all sooted up. They're all black. And it's like someone comes along and starts to clean those panes, and all of a sudden the light can shine out. And, you start to clean some of that off, some of the crusty, crappy layers off. Wow, you can move again. You feel good. Because you are being that butterfly. You're being your truest, most authentic, most badass, most unapologetic, awesome self,
Yeah. The thing that this is just such a fantastic conversation. I'm just really loving it here. And I want to go back to something you said way back at the beginning. You were talking about losing your sense of worthiness as a result of some of these triggers and these comments that people said of you. And one thing that I know now, and I'm sure you know it now, and maybe a lot of other people who are listening to us know it, but there are some people who are still struggling with this, is that everyone is worthy. You don't have to do anything to become worthy. You are worthy just by your very nature. And I want to talk about this a little bit here. How
yes. Well, you know what? This is sometimes something that I will close a talk with. You're born, so you're worthy. And your message really matters. So it's also just realizing that there's nobody who is at any other level than anyone else in the worthiness department. We were all born into the world, so we're automatically worthy. And when we're healing those wounds inside ourselves that you and I are talking about today, that is how we're healing the world. When you step into and stand up tall inside of your worthiness, whenever you do it, whenever that moment happens for you, that's a healing moment right there. Those moments are so important. So yes, I mean, you and I are on the same page with that. You don't have to do anything to be worthy. And what's the quote from Dr. Dyer? You're worthy because you think you're worthy. Well,
and I'd rather eliminate the word think in that whole statement, because you don't have to think it. You don't have to think it at all. You are simply worthy.
You already are.
Based just by virtue of existing.
Agreed.
I am. Period. That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this is this truth, this worthiness truth applies to every energy form everywhere on the planet and beyond. There is no one energy form that is any more worthy than any other. We all have a purpose. We all have our own agenda, if you like, that is something that we may not know in our conscious mind, but something that emanates up from our soul and becomes a part of who we are over the course of our lifetime. In fact, I think a big part of our journey is to remember that purpose and to, come to awareness of it. So,
yes. Awareness is everything. Awareness is the foundation for all of this. And how do we take this idea? Because, worthiness, unworthiness, worthiness, this gets talked about a lot. But, how do we take this idea and help people move into the day-to-day of their ordinary lives and make something of it right there where it really matters? And I know for me, every day that I wake up, every moment that I'm inside of my life or my business or my relationships, it still comes down to what's coming into my brain in the moment about it. Sometimes there's these self-sabotaging thoughts. Well, because I've built this foundation of awareness and I jumped over that I'm worthy because I was born hurdle. I'm there. I know it. I have to remind myself sometimes. I had to remind myself a lot more in the beginning. Now, not so much. I'm there, and I can very quickly remind myself of that. But how is it playing out in whatever is in front of me? Well, then we deal with a relationship problem or a work problem or this problem or that problem. And then the thoughts come back in. Oh, this isn't good enough. They don't like me. And then it's like, oh my God, really? All the years you've been practicing this and all the ways that you've been teaching other people this stuff, but it comes right back again. And I think that's where I'm having a little bit more fun with it, because you realize your own habitual bullshit and you can wake up in the moment and just kind of laugh a little. You know what I did? Oh, man, I learned the best, most awesome tool from a writing mentor that I had, Laura Munson. We did a writing retreat together and she told us to name our inner critic. So Martha is my gal. And when she shows up, I'm just like, hey, I hear you, Martha. Thanks, but I got this. And I can step away a little bit out of the crappy message and realize it's coming from that old conditioned place. And then I get on with the badassery. I get on with the action I want to take. I get on with the conversation I might want to have with that difficult person, because I know it's going to be okay.
Well, badassery, what can I say? That's a great word.
I love that word.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think what you're talking about here is the struggle that we all have with our ego mind. Yep. Unfortunately, there is just simply no way to shut it off permanently, at least not as long as we're in this physical realm.
Darn it.
And I think that the ego mind, as dysfunctional as it can be in many ways, it actually serves a valuable purpose. First of all, it helps us to navigate this physical world. That's first and foremost. But the second thing that it does, given that it is based it has fear-based ideas, it's always looking to keep us safe. It's looking for danger. It's looking for peril. It's looking for things that are scary and so forth and so on. Yes. So it's constantly bringing our attention to those things. Now that can be, tiring if it's doing it all the time. So the idea is not so much to shut down the ego mind. And you already alluded to this a moment ago when you talked about naming your voice, naming that inner critic. What you're doing is you're personalizing it into something that you can actually, create a face on it and talk to that as a being. And say, I really appreciate all that you do for me. I really am grateful for the ways that you try to keep me safe. I am thrilled that you are constantly on the lookout for me. And I'm an adult now. I have adult powers that I didn't have when you first came into existence, when you first showed up when I was a kid. And I really needed you back then. And I still want you here as a kind of a co-pilot. But I don't want you driving the bus anymore. Yeah. I want to drive the bus because I'm an adult now. So you got to, you have these conversations. And if you acknowledge the ego mind, if you acknowledge the inner critic and pay attention to what it's saying and even share some gratitude for its perspective without necessarily agreeing or buying into it, then you can just quiet the ego mind pretty naturally in that way. That's been my experience. And I keep telling people this, and some of them do it, and some of them don't. But hey, their own ego minds get in the way and say, no, he's wrong. You can't listen to him.
No, you're so right about that. And I love hearing you talk about that. It's natural for that to go on. I think maybe, what do you think about people who are just stuck in that ruminating thought process? I think that's really where I like to talk about that idea. If we could just break up the habit of being in that mind all the time. Being in that mind all the time is so exhausting and so depressing and so scary sometimes and hopeless, so I think the real game changer, and for me, the life changer, was just waking up to it. It really is that simple. Befriending it a little bit, knowing that it's there on purpose to protect me, naming it, making some space. That's all about awareness. And the more awareness I cultivated around this, the better it became. I can't tell you it doesn't happen. Like you said, I guess we can't shut it down. It's just a natural process that will happen forever. But I sure can do all of the things I want to do now without being paralyzed by that. That can be big for people.
Yeah. And compassion goes a long way too.
Yeah.
If you can learn to have compassion for your ego mind, then you can learn to have compassion for all the rest of yourself, including all the fears that you have and everything else. And And then you become more, what's the word I want to say, more present and more aware and more accepting of what is, which makes it possible to deal with whatever's going on in your life in a more equanimical way. I don't know, whatever it is. I think it's the right word. But anyway, you know what I'm saying, with equanimity. And this is a really, really important thing, because if we refuse to deal with our fears, if we refuse to acknowledge them and just understand them, what we're basically doing is we're allowing it to grow like a tumor maybe just in our imagination, but it could also manifest as a physical thing too. And so if we leave it untreated, it's eventually going to solidify into some kind of a barrier that keeps preventing us from getting anywhere in our lives. And soon enough, it will seem insurmountable. So we, I think, have to choose sooner or later to deal with everything in our lives, and to deal with the fears, to deal with the pains, to deal with the old wounds, all of that stuff we have to do sooner or later, or we fail to do so at our own peril.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, you're just making me think, at the very least, then you're just living like a zombie. So, I mean, people do live like this for their whole lives. And what a shame that is, because we know the possibility. I think you said something earlier about, the depth of pain that people are afraid is there waiting when they dive in. But guess what? The depth, the amount of pain is also equal. That's a possibility that you might feel, is then equally the amount of joy you could possibly experience on the other end of the spectrum. I like to remind people of this. The Brené Brown quote is, if you're numbing the pain, you're also numbing the joy. So if you're not willing to dive deep, that's okay. Then expect to be able to feel this much on the joy part of the spectrum. And honestly, that's the adventure and the experiment I've gone on my whole life in this healing career, is like, how deep can I dive over here? Because I know the gift over here. Yeah. And I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to experience illegal amounts of joy. I'm ready to understand what that feels like, and to be able to talk about it, and also because it helps me inspire people. Right. So you have to be willing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think, if you're shutting down your fear, then you're shutting down your ability to feel.
Yep.
And if you're shutting down your ability to feel, then you're shutting down your ability to feel all emotions equally.
Yes.
So I think that's a very important point that you just brought up. And so if you want to feel more joy, then you've got to allow yourself to feel everything else in the whole spectrum of emotion. And when something comes up, you have to give yourself permission to just feel it. Because when you feel it, you express it. And if you express it, then it passes through you just like, a passing storm. And after every passing storm, usually what we get is some beautiful sunlight.
Yes. Well, you said something really important. If we feel it, we express it. Not necessarily. A lot of people feel it and can't express it. For whatever reason, they feel this huge feeling. And I think the most important part to remind people of today about this is, you and I did not do this alone. You and I did this with skilled guides. So if you guys are interested in these topics and you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let me dive. I want to dive. Please don't think that we are telling you that you're doing it all by your lonesome, because I don't know what your feeling is on this, but I don't know that I could have done that alone. I needed people to nudge me. I needed people to show me a perspective. I needed people who were very skilled at the dialogue to help me with words. I needed so many different things, right? And I can see my journey as a layer peeled here, and another layer and another layer. And I was going deeper and deeper, and also experiencing some massive amounts of joy along the way. So it kept me going, right? I had motivation to keep seeking. What do you think about that? I don't think we have to do it alone, and I don't know that we should.
No, absolutely. This is part of the problem of what I call kind of spiritual bypass thinking, where I don't really have to do this. I can pray it away. I can meditate it away. I can do all these other things that, give me peace of mind. And yeah, you might experience some peace of mind doing that. But you really, I believe this is true for all of us. We all, sooner or later, have to find our way into the muck and the pain and the wounds and the traumas of our past, and to find a way to heal them. And when I say find a way, I don't mean doing it by ourselves. In fact, I would strongly encourage people to find an organization or a group or some, people out there, coaches, life coaches like the two of us here, who are able to help you do that in a safe way. Now, when I do one-on-one coaching, I generally don't take people that deep on a one-on-one level. When I do group coaching and I have a container where all the people are there for the same purpose, then we do it. And we go very, very deep in those cases. But those are very special kinds of groups, and something that, you have to create the container in a very sacred way in order for people to feel safe and to feel that they're willing to trust and allow themselves to do the work. And
yes, I completely agree. And I'll say one more thing about that, because a lot of the times then people get a little bit frustrated. They don't maybe want to spend a lot of money on this journey. They're afraid that it's going to be thousands of dollars too, in addition to all of the pain they have to feel. And, so I guess what I'm going to say about that is you can get into some conversations that are these sacred containers, just like the conversation we're having today, to increase your awareness and have other fellow journeyers by your side. And it's so important to build a community around you that can have these conversations. The conversations themselves can be healing for you. I mean, as you were saying earlier, even, you going through a process, or there are people around you watching that process, those people were having moments and processing. Well, that can happen even when two people have a conversation about something and you're the bystander just listening in. You're resonating deeply. The energy is shifting in you, and something shifts. You may feel like you want to have a cry. You may feel like you want to do a lot of different things. But I just know that without some really awesome people in my life, I couldn't have gone to the depth I've gone. Right. But it can start with a very simple getting yourself in a community where you're having great conversations, and let yourself be guided from there,
Right. Well, I agree with everything you've said. And at the same time, I want to tell people, I said, look, you are worthy and you deserve to have a great life. And you may be afraid that you're going to have to pay thousands of dollars. And maybe you will have to pay thousands of dollars to get the kind of healing you need. But let me ask you this. What is it costing you right now not to take care of yourself? Is it worth it to save a few $1,000s and have no joy in your life? I don't know. I don't think so. I personally, I swear, I have spent close to $150,000 over the years on different programs that I've learned, different courses that I've taken, different trainings that I've done, and all of them, I don't regret a penny of it. If you were to tell me today that I'd have to go and spend $150,000 to do all that, I'd probably say, no thanks. But I didn't spend it all at once. I spent it a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And as I realized how valuable this was to me, I soon found that I was willing to spend more money each time.
Yes, because what you realize every time and what you're feeling is being uncovered is really your truest, healthiest, most joyful essence. That's priceless.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it. It's funny.
I want to go back to one. I'm sorry, you have something else?
Oh, no, you're just making me think. I'm going to go add mine up too, because it's a pretty big number. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Earlier on, you mentioned this thing about purpose-driven fear.
Yes.
And I wanted to come back to that because I think that's a really powerful phrase. And I want to get people to understand what you really mean by that. So can you just talk a little bit about what you think of as purpose-driven fear and how it's different from other kinds of fear?
The piece of awareness you have to have as you start thinking about what purpose-driven fear might look like in your life is your own deepest desire and dreams. And honestly, when I ask that question to some people and they're like, I don't know, they start from a place where they honestly don't know. They've been taking care of other people their entire lives. They don't know what they really want or what their deepest desire is. Fantastic. That's a great place to start, is just to sit, work on some meditation, work on some journaling, feel into what might be those deepest desires and dreams and goals. Because without that big why, that big purpose in your life, it's hard to face purpose-driven fear and go for it. People much rather sit in their comfort zone because they're used to it. First of all, things are pretty good over there. Nothing's too, unsafe or unsure. So they like it there to stay steady. And, purpose-driven fear, I don't know, I don't really have that big burning purpose in me to really want to go outside the comfort zone. But I mean, you're running into a lot of people these days talking about purpose. I think that ultimately the biggest purpose of each of us is to feel joy. And if you are a person not feeling that so much in your life, that's where I would stop and sit and wallow in it until you realize that there's opportunity for you to feel much more of it. You have to connect with the desire. And then once you really even understand what it is you want, and you're connecting with your own intuition, which is giving you some messages about that, you're going to get a direction. The purpose-driven fear feeling will become a compass. And it's going to, I'm a little excited about that. I'm a little afraid to go there. That's it. That's the purpose-driven kind of fear. It's going to show you exactly where you should head to get to the next best step for whatever that desire, that big dream, that big goal is. Does that all make some sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about, you describe it as excitement, and that's exactly how I feel about it. And for me, excitement is really nothing more than a combination of joy and fear kind of swirling together, and it's actually a really good feeling. It's a very exciting feeling. and the word excitement, implies it's an activating agent. It gets you moving, it causes energy to move. And this is the sort of thing that really gets us all motivated, and inspired.
Yes.
So you have a dream, a heartfelt dream, and something inside there is saying, this is really something I got to do. And then you start looking for ways to bring it into reality. And that's when maybe the fear starts to show up. But the joy and the excitement and the motivation and anticipation and the inspiration of that dream doesn't go away.
Yeah, that's one sign of it.
Feeling.
Yeah, that's one sign of it being purpose-driven, is it keeps coming up. It keeps resurfacing. Yep. And my breath worker gal says, fear is just excitement without the breath.
Oh,
so you're feeling that. And you're clamping down on it a little bit. You're holding your breath a little bit. And, so I like that too. Yeah. Breathe through it.
Yeah. That breath is so amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, Laura, this has been an awesome conversation. Our time is just about up, and I would like to kind of close this out, but I'm just so impressed and had such a great time talking with you today. First of all, I want to tell people, here's one of Laura's books. This is called Warrior Dreams. And Laura gave this to me when we were at a workshop together And she did a little presentation, and I sat through it, and I was really impressed. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have her on the show. But anyway, I wanted to read one of her poems here to you. So I'm just going to read this, and forgive me if I will do my best to read it in Laura's voice, if that's possible.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's called Burning Inside. When you're burning inside, hiding some part of your life, wanting to show the world, as usual, smothering your soul instead. Feel the dread in your gut. Don't put up with that stuff. You're meant to live fully alive. Notice the ways you play the game, like everyone says, and go against the very thing that lights you up and lets you shine. See how you're killing yourself slowly, only going where you're led by someone else's rules, not using your own tools. Be brave. Don't settle. Say the thing that needs to be said. Make courage your bed. Live the way you're meant to. Joyful, wild, and free. So I just wanted to share that with you. I want to say thank you to you, Laura, for writing that and for writing the book. And thank you so much for being here on the show today.
It's been my total pleasure. Thank you for that awesome conversation.
And thank you to all of you for watching today's program. Remember, you can watch recordings of this and all other previous episodes on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. And as you go through your week, I want to just remind you to practice the Life Mastery mantra every single day. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully embrace the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. Thanks again for being here. Until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your journey. Bye-bye for now.